Jamie, let's start with one of your fighters, Dave Allen. Obviously, recently fought Johnny Fisher. Potential rematch, potentially in the UK. Just talk me through that one. Do you feel the fight deserves a rematch, first of all?
Yeah, I think everyone everyone's opinion is that they thought Dave won. I've seen loads and loads of comments. Very, very, very few people who thought Johnny won, um, and I get it. He's the way fights are scored for me is the problem. I don't see the point in having a 10 point must system and not utilizing those 10 points differently. Had this conversation loads of times after Jack boxed Josh Taylor the first time. And because what you have is so in my opinion, Dave's fight with Johnny was 5-all, and Dave won it by the knockdown. Maybe 6-4 to Dave, but for argument's sake, 5-all, and he won it by the knockdown. So when you do it scored by rounds, it's a close fight. But what happens during those rounds has a big impact on the way people view how that fight's played out. So for me, you can't have me, so I'm starting out in my career and I'm boxing a 4 rounder against a journeyman and I punch him from pillar to post. He doesn't land a glove on me and I win that round 10-9. And I box Floyd Mayweather and it's a close round, but I finish it with the last 10, 15 seconds, land a few good shots, and everyone goes, very close round, but he just nicked it with that last little barrage at the end. That scored 10-9 as well. So I don't see how we shouldn't be using the 10 point system better. For instance, if you if I so the same scenario with the journeyman should be 10-6, for instance. That way, the the rounds where you win them bigger would have more of an impact on the fight at the end. So say for instance Dave's rounds were at least 10-8s or 10-7s with the knockdown, and Johnny Fisher's were 10-9s, then that means that even though he's won the rounds, the way you've won the rounds and the quality of your work during those rounds is then replicated in the scoring at the end of the fight. So everyone knows who's going to fight in terms of who hit who the more often and the hardest. And that's why people are going, Dave Allen won that fight against Johnny Fisher. But when you actually score it the way boxing's scored now, you can see why it's a close fight on the scorecards. And there is ways of changing that slightly. I think that's a lot of the reason why Jack Catterall didn't get the decision against Josh Taylor. You know, that was a much for me that was like 9-3 in rounds, or the very worst case 8-4. But Jack's rounds were much bigger in the way he won them than Josh's were. So so I don't know what do you do at this stage. We've got such a history of boxing and the way boxing is scored. How do you change it? But I definitely feel like we've got to change it for the better in the long run, because you can't be winning 4 rounds against a journeyman and it's 40-36, and you win 4 rounds against the best pound for pound fighter in the world, and it's very close and it's the same scoring. Doesn't make sense.
I mean, what is the answer? They obviously the Fury Usyk rematch, they had the AI judging, and at first glance, just watching it in the pub, and for me, it was a very close fight. You could have given it either way by 2 rounds max, in my opinion. But then when I sat down and scored it like you do score rounds in boxing, I had it the same as the AI judge. I had it 118 for Usyk. So with AI, even that is sitting there and doing it by the 10-9, 10-8 for.
Yeah.
So what is
I,
the answer?
I was there on the night. I watched it and I thought Usyk was a clear winner. I think maybe I had it the same 118, 112 or whatever the balance is. But yeah, I think it was 118, 112. But you know, I'm not. I don't like AI. This is nothing to do with boxing. Just in general, it gives me gives me the creeps. And, there's so many different types of problems what you can get. One of my favourite films when I was a kid was Terminator as well, and and it just seems like we're going down that path, and it's I feel like in the long run it's going to cause more problems than gains. Um, but having said that, it's a good tool to have for stuff like that. You know, it, I'm trying to play the devil's advocate here. I'm only saying this because I scored it exactly the same as the AI judge, and you just said the same. But if I'd have scored it to Fury like I've seen a few people did, then you would be going, there you go, it's nonsense because it's an opinion. So I think that's why we have problems with judges scoring. Everyone's opinion. He's very opinion based, and again, I've had this conversation loads of times that maybe it should be a little bit more structured about how you score a round, and then your opinion on how that round's gone is not as important as the actual facts of the round, because it's too easy. A judge has got way too much leniency in just going, well, in my opinion, he won that round, and you don't really have to give a reason why. So yeah, yeah, it's not. It's not. There's no one straightforward answer to it. There's a few little aspects to it, but it can be improved. That's the thing. I think the thing is, if we sat down, one of the main problems is there's not a worldwide overseeing governing body who could make that decision and go, right, listen, this is what we're going to do for the better of the sport. And if we did, then we'd be in a better place because universally then we'd be able to say, right, guys, every judge has got to go on a weekend course and going to be explained to how from this point on it's not going to be that different, but there's going to be a few different bits of criteria what you need to understand to make sure that we're scoring fights in a right and fair way.
It's a fight that seems to warrant a rematch. Looking at the fan base and like you said, the outcries really of a lot of people saying robbery. Dave should have won it by a clear margin. A lot of people felt, like you mentioned earlier. Has there been any approach to yourself and Dave's team for a rematch? Is there any negotiations ongoing currently?
Not no approach as of yet, but I'm pretty sure it's still quite close. We've just had Christmas and New Year and stuff, and then I know Matchroom have been in Australia, so I'm pretty sure that soon they'll start putting the feelers out. I know Dave's up for it. Sounds like Johnny's up for it. I think they're looking at having a fight in between. So I think I've heard rumours that Johnny wants a fight in between, and then they'll go straight back in with Dave, which fair play. I've got to say this, and it has been said loads of times, but they're a great bunch of guys. No animosity. Dave and Johnny get on really well, which I love that. It's great to see, like two mates knocking shit out of each other and then the best of pals afterwards. That's how it should be. That's how boxing's a sport at the end of the day. But yeah, I'll be honest with you. I think a lot of people, and understandably, rightly so, look at it from the outside and go, Johnny Fisher's got more room for improvement. So if he has a fight in between and then they go again in the summer, he's probably going to improve more. Believe me, Dave was probably only about 50% of what he can be, and he'll admit this himself. That's down to him. He's never really trained properly, but he did for this fight. And the point I'm making is his starting point wasn't great because he doesn't really train in between fights, but he got himself into the absolute best physical position he could have in those 11, 12 weeks. Now, if his starting point is better this time, which it will be because he's now already taking over training, then his ceiling is way higher than people understand it can be. And, people, heavyweights who he sparred years ago have said to him for years and years, he can be so much better than he's ever shown. And he now, I think the penny's dropped with him. Now he understands that if he applies himself properly, he can do it, and he's still young enough to do it. He's got a bit of wear and tear. He's had some hard fights over the years, but he's 32 years old, and coming off the back of a performance like that, after really one of probably the only times he's trained properly for a fight. He now understands that if he applies himself properly, not only can he put a performance in like that, but he could be 10 times better than that. I really believe that. So, we've all had a nice little break over Christmas and New Year, but now we're going to crack on and get the ball moving now. If Johnny's going to box in between, an 8 rounder or whatever he's going to do, then Dave should as well to keep active, and then they go at it again in the summer and may the best man win.
To look at the negative side of it, in terms of having an extra fight in between, obviously another, let's say for example, maybe another year later, um, does all of that stack up in Johnny's favour rather than Dave's?
Well, not no. That's for the reasons why I just said. Is Dave can get better. Dave, activity, fitness, that type of conditioning, his timing and his sharpness, all that stuff. The longer you're training, or the longer you don't train, I should say, in between, the less those type of things go away, and then it takes longer to get back. So if Dave stays on it now and keeps his tools sharp, so to speak, then potentially he's got much more growth in the way he can improve on that performance from last time than Johnny has. Johnny's going to get better with experience, but 6 months is not a lot of time to gain experience. To get better over time, you need time. So I've no issue with having one fight in between. But if there was to turn around to me to say we need to make sure that Johnny has 4 or 5 fights first before he goes back in with Dave, then I just say to Dave, my advice to him then would be just leave it because you're going to be 34 by then, and we may as well look at other options. But from what I'm hearing, they want one fight and then go at it again, and yeah, that's music to my ears. In all honesty,
In terms of the pair, obviously they know each other a lot better now after that fight. Johnny and Mark Tibbs will know a lot more of what Dave Allen's about right now at this present moment. For yourself, what did you guys take away from Johnny Fisher? Was there anything that surprised you in the fight about Johnny?
well, it's probably what not surprised, but what they found out a lot about Johnny is what we found out as well. Is that he's fucking one ballsy bastard. Like there's a few times in that fight where I thought he was going to go. I think there was one point in the seventh round where he sort of turned in the corner, and I thought they're going to throw the towel or pull him out here. And he gritted it out, he stuck it out, and what a tough man. So I'll take me off to him. It's those heavyweights are a different breed. They punch so hard, and yeah, I think one thing that I didn't expect was him to sort of try and pace himself a little bit. He came out and he wasn't as gung ho as he has been in the past, where he just went for it. And I think that was probably out of respect for Dave. He knew he was a crafty character. Dave's defense is underrated. His little shoulder roll, and it's like a little bit like a James Toney type defense. Um, but but yeah, nothing. I wouldn't say anything surprised me, but what impressed me was his ballsiness and his heart to come through those difficult rounds. Round sort of 5, 6, 7 was hard rounds.